diversity. We are one, you and I, and it's our right to know how and why. WION, you are more connected than you know.
On World is One, thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching World DNA with me, Hem Korsara, and here's a look at all the headlines that we're tracking at this hour. Russia claims it has taken full control of the eastern Ukrainian city of Avdiivka, hours after Kyiv said it had pulled out of the former stronghold to save soldiers' lives. US President Joe Biden tells Ukrainian counterpart Zelensky that he is confident the Congress will renew war aid. Adds that without American help, Kyiv could lose further territory to Russian advances. Alexei Navalny's supporters accused Russian authorities of covering their tracks by refusing to hand over his body. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dismisses the idea of holding early elections while thousands of Israelis gather in Tel Aviv for an anti-government protest. UK Foreign Minister David Cameron is set to visit the Falklands Islands, over which the UK fought a war with Argentina in 1982. This will be the first visit of a UK cabinet minister to the island since then Defence Secretary Michael Fallon in 2016. As the farmers' agitation in India enters day 6, the northern state of Haryana extends mobile internet suspension in 7 districts till the 19th of February. Defending champion Carlos Alcaraz is out of the Argentina Open after a shock 7-6, 6-3 semi-final defeat to Chile's Nicolas Jarry on Saturday. Now, Russia has claimed that it has taken full control of the eastern Ukrainian city of Avdiivka hours after Kyiv said it has pulled out of the former stronghold, and this was to save the lives of the soldiers. This comes as the war closes in on its 2-year mark on the 24th February, when Moscow announced a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin hailed his army's capture of the eastern Ukrainian town of Avdiivka as an important victory. The capture of the town marks the most significant territorial gain for Russia's forces since the seizure of Bakhmut last May. This is the map of Ukraine that shows the changes in Russian territorial control during the nearly 2 years of war. The Russian operations or advances indicated in orange here, as you can see. Kyiv had earlier announced its withdrawal from the town, which it said was taken to reduce military casualties at a time of stretched resources. Ukraine's 3rd Assault Brigade released footage showing the movement of servicemen under fire in Avdiivka.
Пацани, за цей будинок! Вхід з двору в підвал! Вам Старлінк дали? Да!
Russia back on the offensive in eastern Ukraine, with Kyiv suffering a shortage of ammunition and manpower. Russian rocket fire killed at least 2 people in the eastern city of Kramatorsk, which is around 20 kilometers from the front lines in eastern Ukraine. Meanwhile, addressing the gathering of politicians, diplomats and military officials from around the world at the Munich Security Conference, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky urged allies to plug an artificial shortage of weapons that is giving Russian forces the upper hand on the battlefield. He added that the stalled US aid was imperative. President Biden, on the other hand, has assured that he is confident that Congress will renew war aid.
I spoke with Zelensky this afternoon to let him know that I was confident we're going to get that money to keep that country from being overrun by Russia. You know, there's so much at stake. I watched the television the other night, and one of the other Republican candidates saying, I've never explained to the American people why NATO is so important. NATO is critical to our survival.
Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba, who also attended the Munich Security Conference, said that he had discussed the prospects for peace with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. This was also part of a long-running bid to bolster relations with Beijing. Kuleba said that he had discussed Ukraine's plans to hold a global peace summit, which Switzerland has agreed to help stage.
We need, all of us need much more artillery ammunition.
Very much, and come again next year.
We are lost. We do not know where to go. I pray that the whole world pressurizes Israel to end the war and release us. We are tired. We've been walking around without knowing where to go.
Now, over in West Asia, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Israel will enter Rafah even if a hostage deal is reached with Hamas. And this comes as Tel Aviv faces growing pressure to hold off sending troops into the southern Gazan city, where about 1.4 million Palestinians have sought refuge in Rafah. The major population center in Gaza, it is now under threat of a full-scale military operation. Despite a direct appeal from the US President Joe Biden earlier this week, Netanyahu has maintained that not mounting military action in Rafah would effectively mean losing the war against Hamas.
Whoever is telling us not to operate in Rafah is telling us to lose the war. I won't give it a hand.
Now, talks have been held in the Egyptian capital to try and broker a pause in the fighting, but Israel did not go back for further talks. The Prime Minister has said that Hamas's demands were delusional. Netanyahu also reiterated his opposition to the recognition of a Palestinian state. The Egyptian and Qatari mediated talks aim to reach a ceasefire in Gaza and secure the release of over 100 Israeli hostages, but they're yet to produce results.
This negotiation requires a firm stand. I must tell you, citizens of Israel, that until this moment, right up until this moment, the demands of Hamas are delusional. They want to defeat Israel. Of course, we will not agree to them. But when Hamas drops these delusional demands, we can move forward.
Meanwhile, Israelis continue to mount pressure on the government. Thousands gathered in Tel Aviv on Saturday, calling for the immediate release of all hostages still in Gaza. They accused Netanyahu of abandoning the hostages, chanting that the government has blood on its hands. Protesters demanded the resignation of the current Israeli government and urged early elections, an idea that Netanyahu has time and again dismissed. Now, both the Russia-Ukraine war and the Israel-Hamas conflict dominated the Munich Security Conference. World leaders, military officers and diplomats are in Munich for the three-day annual conference dubbed the Davos of Defense. While Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky made a fresh appeal for more weapons, delegates at the conference also discussed the situation in Gaza, with some holding out slim hope of a lasting solution to end the Israel-Hamas war. With the war about to enter its third year, Ukraine is under mounting pressure over the ammunition shortfall. The long-term future of Western aid is also in doubt. Seeking to allay fears over U.S. stamina in helping Ukraine, Vice President Kamala Harris said that after talks with Zelensky, her country would not allow political brinksmanship to stand in the way of support to Kyiv.
We will work to make sure Russia pays damages to Ukraine, and ultimately we want to see Ukraine emerge from this war as a nation that is free, democratic, and independent. President Zelensky, as President Joe Biden and I have made clear, we will be with you for as long as it takes.
Speaking at the conference, Qatar's Prime Minister provided a gloomy assessment of the talks to seek a ceasefire in the more than 4-month-old Gaza conflict.
You know, the time is not in our favor. We made some good progress in the last few weeks in the negotiations, and we've been trying to reach an agreement between the two parties, yet the last few days has not been progressing as expected, and I believe there are still differences in place.
Now, he warned that failure to reach a deal could lead to a wider escalation in the region as hundreds of thousands of Gazans faced a dire humanitarian situation. The foreign ministers of Egypt and Saudi Arabia also underlined in Munich in the security conference the catastrophic situation facing civilians in Gaza. Diplomats seeking an end to the conflict said, however, that there may be a unique chance to end the cycle of violence in the next months. China kept its diplomatic stance, stating that it is willing to act as a source of stability to promote cooperation among countries. Chinese Foreign Minister called for accelerated efforts from the international community for the establishment of an independent state of Palestine so that peace can prevail as early as possible. Earlier, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken had said Israel had an extraordinary opportunity to normalize relations with almost every Arab nation. If the Gaza conflict came to an end, Israeli President Isaac Herzog, who held talks with Blinken, urged Saudi Arabia to normalize ties with this country, saying that would be a win against Hamas. Now, as the farmers' protest in India enters day 6, a fourth round of talks are likely to be held between the farmers and the government later in the day. Ahead of the crucial meeting, the farmers have also demanded an ordinance from the government, and that's to provide a legal guarantee over one of their main demands, and that's the minimum support price. The government panel that will comprise of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare Minister Arjun Munda, Minister of Commerce and Industry Piyush Goyal, and Minister of State for Home Affairs Nityanand Rai will meet the farmer leaders. The first 3 rounds of talks between the two sides remained inconclusive. Meanwhile, the Haryana state government has extended the ban on mobile internet and bulk SMS services in at least 7 districts, including Ambala and Kurukshetra, till the 19th of February. Amid the ongoing agitation, Bharatiya Kisan Union, it has announced that farmers will stage a sit-in protest in the states of Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, Punjab and Uttarakhand on the 21st of February. Besides the legal guarantee of MSP, the protesters have asked for pensions for farmers and farm labourers, farm debt waiver, no hike in electricity tariff and also compensation for the families of the farmers who died during a previous agitation that was in 2020 to 2021. Among the demands is also the reinstatement of the Land Acquisition Act of 2013. The Act places more power in the hands of landowners. It states that the government or private entities will have to get the consent of the original landowners before acquiring any land. The protesters have continued to be at the Shambhu and Karnadi points on Punjab's border with Haryana. Farmer unions have said that if the government does not accept the demands, they will launch a tractor march to the national capital, Delhi, possibly on the 26th and the 27th of February. And since the time Canada alleged India's involvement in the killing of Khalistani extremist leader, diplomatic ties between the two nations have, of course, taken a nosedive. The expulsion of 41 Canadian diplomats from India has had an unexpected fallout. Students' visas processed by Canada in the year 2023 dipped by a whopping 42%. As per the Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada portal, when compared to October to December in the year 2022, the number of Indian student permits applications finalized by Canada in the last quarter of 2023, that's dipped massively. In 2023, Canada processed just over 60,000 applications by Indian students compared to over 100,000 applications in the year 2022. The decrease in total student visa permits by Canadian authorities between the year 2022 and 2023 was by 15%. On the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar held a meeting with his Canadian counterpart Melanie Joly. Two leaders discussed the present state of bilateral ties between the two nations. The Indian External Affairs Minister said it was useful to exchange views on the current global situation with the Canadian Foreign Minister. Now, the Philippines has accused China's Coast Guard of dangerous maneuvers after Chinese boats shadowed a Filipino vessel and repeatedly blocked its attempts to deliver food and fuel to fishermen. The incident took place around the disputed Scarborough Shoal in South China Sea on Thursday and Friday, and this comes days after the Philippine Coast Guard made similar accusations against Chinese boats in the same region.
Every time we come here, I'm really nervous. We don't know what will happen. Maybe they will do what they did before. They might fire a water cannon or force us to leave.
Scarborough Shoal, a triangular chain of reefs and rocks, it's become a flashpoint between the two countries ever since China seized it from the Philippines back in 2012. In the latest incident, Filipino and Chinese boat kept issuing repeated radio challenges to each other while accusing the other of encroachment on their waters. Despite the blocking attempts, the Filipino boat was able to deliver fuel and other provisions to 19 fishing boats. According to the authorities, over 385,000 Filipino fishermen depend on waters located to the west of the country. The disputed shoal is located around 240 kilometers west of Philippines. Even last year, several incidents, including collisions between the vessels of two countries, were reported. Chinese ships even blasted water cannons at the Philippine boats. Since then, Beijing has deployed patrol boats in the region, which Manila repeatedly accuses of harassment. Beijing claims almost the entire South China Sea, despite an international tribunal ruling that its assertions have no legal basis. On to news now from the world of business. In a world where economic uncertainties loom large, the recent resurgence in UK retail sales seem to offer a glimmer of hope for global consumers. But is there more to the story than the headlines? Well, that's almost always the case in the world of business and economics. So how is the British economy actually doing? But more importantly, how is the British consumer doing? Take a look at our next report to find out.
If you've been feeling the pinch of rising costs lately, you're not alone. British consumers are going through a rough patch, but there's finally some good news on the horizon. In January, something remarkable happened. Retail sales shot up by 3.4% compared to December. That's the biggest jump we've seen since April 2021. It means people were out there spending more than expected despite the tough times. From a global perspective, the UK's retail rebound signifies a potential resilience among consumers facing economic headwinds. Despite concerns about recessionary pressures, people are demonstrating a willingness to spend, supported by factors such as wage growth and cooling inflation. But what's particularly intriguing is the composition of these purchases. While essentials, especially from food shops, saw significant boosts in sales, the overall increase in total spending suggests a desire among consumers to maximize value for their money. This strategic approach to spending amidst economic uncertainty underscores the adaptability of consumers in navigating challenging times. However, it's essential to view this retail rebound within the broader context of the recessionary landscape. Despite the positive momentum in January, UK retail sales still linger below pre-pandemic levels, indicative of the persistent challenges posed by the recession. Looking ahead, the sustainability of this retail resurgence will depend on various factors, including the trajectory of the recession, wage dynamics, and inflationary pressures. Moreover, the impact of external factors such as rising business rates and new border control costs could further shape consumer behavior in the months to come. But for now, the bottom line is that UK consumers are still facing pressure from the cost of living crisis. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Now, opener Yashasvi Jaiswal's 104 put India firmly in command of the third test against England at the end of day 3. The hosts are leading by 322 runs with 8 second innings wickets in hand in Rajkot. India took the field on day 3 without Ravichandran Ashwin. The off-spinner had withdrawn from the ongoing test due to a family emergency. England resumed the day at 207 for 2, but they soon collapsed. Joe Root attempted a risky reverse scoop of Jasprit Bumrah but was caught at second slip by Jaiswal. It was the 9th time in 21 test innings that Root has fallen to his Indian nemesis. Johnny Bairstow soon followed Root back to the balcony for a duck. Ben Duckett tamely patted a very wide delivery from Kuldeep Yadav to fall for 153. Ben Stokes and Ben Foakes briefly hinted at a recovery but fell in successive balls to Ravindra Jadeja and Mohammad Siraj respectively. Siraj then went on to York Rehan Ahmed and James Anderson. England were bowled out for 319. India were leading the visitors by 226 runs when Rohit Sharma and Yashasvi Jaiswal came to bat in their second innings. The hosts lost their captain for 19, but Jaiswal rammed home India's advantage with his second 100 in as many matches. He added a 155-run partnership with Shubman Gill. Unfortunately, 22-year-old Jaiswal retired hurt with a back problem on 104. This led Rajat Patidar to come in, but he was dismissed for a duck by Tom Hartley. India ended play on 196 for 2 with Gill on 65 and night watchman Kuldeep Yadav on 3 at the other end.
And that's it. India first with the ball, making sure picking up those 8 English wickets very early and then piling up. top performance. Shubman Gill and obviously
Edition of World DNA. Thank you so much for tuning in. News and updates continue on the other side on WION World is One.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is One.
This week on Melt, 1,55,386 crore rupees. That's the estimated size of the Indian ADEX in 2024. Group M's Ashwin Padmanabhan and M.A. Parthasarthi share the details.
We are adding about 14,800 odd crores in 24. That's our estimate over 23. For past 3 years, brands didn't have an annual plan for a long time. We're seeing annual plans coming back. We're seeing predictability in spends coming back.
This is going to become perhaps the single largest source of insight because this is straight from the consumer's mouth. It's willingly consented information which they are giving us.
This week on This World, the moral and philosophical aspects of whatever is unfolding in the Gaza Strip. At what point can you stop justifying one wrong because of another wrong or a terrible evil that was committed in the past?
As long as Israel would not be capable to remove this leadership, and I mean specifically Prime Minister Netanyahu, I do not see itself getting out of this hole.
We also turn our attention to the politics of Pakistan, where Shehbaz Sharif is all set to take over as Prime Minister. We turn our attention to the United States, where Kamala Harris seems to have thrown in her hat into the ring. And we take a look at Sora, the new innovation in AI that OpenAI seems to have unleashed. All of that coming up this week on This World.
This week on the West Asia Post, what is the case against Hamas at the ICC? Threat of Israeli operations loom over 1.5 million Gazans in Rafah. Who targeted Iran's gas pipeline? Turkey scrambles to rescue workers from a gold mine. All this and more. Watch the West Asia Post with me, Ghadi Francis, only on WION. World is One.
Elections in Pakistan throw up a fractured mandate as a crown of dense thorns await the new leadership. From Pakistan to India, sizing up the world's biggest ever democratic exercise. A record 968 million people are eligible to vote in India's great big election festival. And Nepal turns to rainbow tourism, reaching out to the LGBTQ community to tap huge potential. All this and lot more on Inside South Asia.
Protesting farmers back on the roads. demanding higher minimum support price for their produce. Capital turns into a fortress. A little over 2 years after they called off their massive protest, chaos unfolds as farmers clash with police. The government says it has agreed to most of their demands, but big differences persist.
Hi, welcome back. You're watching WION World is One with me, Aditi Singh. Let's get you all the top stories we are tracking from around the world right now. But first, let's get you the headlines. Russia claims it has taken full control of the eastern Ukrainian city of Avdiivka hours after Kyiv said it had pulled out of the former stronghold to save soldiers' lives.
Центральна вулиця